So you're in a session called Drupal Contrib-First Approach. Thank you for choosing this one. I know there's a lot of different options out there. What we'll do is we'll start off with an icebreaker. We'll just get to know each other. Yeah, it's the dad joke. That's an icebreaker. So I was just curious about the audience attendees. Who in here would you consider yourself a Drupal developer? By show of hands. Yeah. Who leads projects? Maybe you're also, right, all right. And then, is anyone, you raised your hand as a Drupal developer, is that right?
No.
In the back? Yeah. And what's your role?
I'm more a designer.
More a designer, okay.
I'm learning the coding side of things, but design is my first field.
Very cool. Anyone here that works like who represents a client? You are the client. You work with vendors. Anyone? I didn't see. I think everyone's either leading or developing or designer. Okay. Cool. So, Drupal Contrib-First Approach. My name is jasonawant. I'm a principal software engineer at Nerdery. I've been working with Drupal for almost 10 years now, starting off as account management, development, and then leading projects. Nerdery is my sponsor for today, so a little bit about Nerdery. This is our vision statement. So relentlessly invent a world that works better for all. You can see how that mirrors well with some of the Drupal community values and principles. Nerdery is a digital consultancy offering specializing in platform modernization, IoT services, cloud services, and collaboration to build your product and team. So just a shout out to my personal sponsor there. So we're going to talk through a few topics here, and you'll see some imagery that I've picked up in New Orleans. I'm from New Orleans, so I've just put some imagery into the slide deck to keep it interesting. They don't really match the material. They're just there for aesthetics and eye candy there. So we're going to talk about what it is, and then how we do it, and then the benefits of a Drupal Contrib-First approach. A little bit about I worked at a Drupal agency, and then I came to Nerdery, and Nerdery does a lot of different technologies. They don't specialize in Drupal. And when I joined the team, because we worked with many different companies, with many different technologies, we had we didn't contribute that regularly. It was technologies that were just proprietary. We developed technologies. When I came on board, and I was used to contributing, I was like, well, there's a need here that maybe we can be more outward in our contribution efforts. So then I developed this approach, documented it, shared it internally, and now I'm sharing it with the community, hoping that other people will find it helpful. So let's talk about what it is. So let's see here. Yep, so it's essentially adopting Drupal's community values and principles and development methodologies into your portfolio practice, into your projects. And it also includes, you're collaborating with members of the community and then people that are not yet members of the community. And those are typically our clients and the people that we engage with outside of the community, and hoping to bring them into the community and sharing the approach and the values and principles with them. And so that's it in a nutshell. And it sort of builds upon Drupal's values and principles that are sort of out there on the web. I don't know if anyone's read them, but we'll go through them here. And this is a statement by Dries Bayart, who's the founder of Drupal. And he sort of underscores some of the items here about working with a community. And one thing I highlighted here is the technical and non-technical decisions. So when we're in projects, we decide on solutions, but we also decide on how we're going to work with our partners and our clients. And those non-technical decisions are a part of this aspect of a Drupal Contrib-First approach. So we're just going to highlight the values and principles in the Drupal community. Those are on the web, and you can find them there. And when you read these and you think about how you interact with the community, but also how you interact with your engagements, with your clients, and maybe think about examples in which you can take these values and principles and apply them into your portfolio work. Prioritizing impact. So impact gives us purpose. So, one of the things I did is develop this approach and sort of shared it and build awareness within Nerdery, and I'm doing it now. So that's sort of that's kind of what I'm prioritizing, is the impact, and hopefully sharing this approach and helping others. And it gives me meaning in my work. So I do a lot of client work. As I become a technical lead, I'm doing less and less coding. I do like 5 hours a week. But this gives me Like having this approach gives me meaning and purpose in my work that I do on a day-to-day basis. And then also, part of that is we build software that is easy and accessible and safe for everyone to use. So considering that and building those content authoring tools that are going to empower people, make sure that they can use the platform in order to do their work and share that content on the Drupal platform. So better together. So this is a key aspect of collaborating with our partners, right? We want to bring them on board, help them learn, foster that learning environment, and share that decision-making process with them, and encouraging others to get involved and then be out there and leading our community. So if you're working with engagements, you are there. You're on the front line working with people who maybe not worked with Drupal before, and so you are the ambassador, so to speak. And so part of this also is striving for excellence. So you're out there, you're here at the camp, you're learning, you want to get better, and that's all part of the approach as well. And this is a key aspect to the community. Treat each other with dignity and respect. So as you approach your projects, your team members, you're learning from them, they're learning from you, and you do that as well with your clients and all the stakeholders with your clients. And then the last value and principle is, you're sure what you're doing is fun, you're having a good time. You don't want to be doing things that you're not happy doing. And so all this together is the foundation of this approach. Is just adopting those values and principles into your portfolio work, into your practice. And then we're going to talk about, how do we do it? So I kind of broken it up into three sort of broad topics here. Is engaging with the community, and many of us are, we're already doing that. We're here at camp, right? We're engaged with the community, but then we're extending that, and then you're partnering with the clients. That's the piece that I think that we can take everything we know and our involvement in the community and get other people involved, particularly in our partnerships. And then we're going to talk about specifics, nuts and bolts, how we adopt this approach into our portfolio work. And so let's jump in here. So these are all aspects that we're probably pretty familiar with, right? We're at the camp already. You're probably participating online. Everyone have a Drupal.org user account? Raise your hand if you don't have a Drupal.org user account. You should get one. And then sign up for Slack. Slack is a great space to communicate and get support. And there's other online avenues, and then offline, right? You're at the camp. There's probably a monthly meetup that you can participate in. You can go to other camps. And there's the North American Conference, which will be here next year in May. So you can definitely plan to attend that. And then also in the issue queues, that's also online, but I called it out specifically because that's where a lot of the collaborative decision-making is happening within the Drupal community. And then, just getting involved in other aspects that you can think of. But when you think about those ways of engaging with the community, think about how you can adopt that with your portfolio work. Whether that is, and that kind of leads into the next section where when you start partnering with your clients and the client stakeholders, you need to onboard them to the community. It's not that we're working working for them, but we're also partnering with them. And so teaching them about the community, investing in their knowledge of the community. So taking every touch point you have through your Scrum ceremonies and talking about the community, right? A lot of our work is finding a bug and then going to Drupal.org, finding out if it's been reported, coming back with that information in the daily stand-up and saying, we found a great solution here, there's a patch here, we're going to apply it. Or when you're doing discovery and you're learning or evaluating different solutions, you're bringing that information back and you're sharing that information. Not just the information, but you're sharing how you found it, right? You're getting them more and you're investing in their knowledge of the community. And then just communicating. Some of these topics, they overlap a lot, but you're constantly communicating. If you onboard them with the Drupal attribution system, if you're not familiar with Drupal attribution, when you participate in issue queues, you can get issue credits. not only as an individual, but for organizations. So if you're doing work on behalf of an organization, on the onboarding process, you get them a Drupal.org account, then you can credit that organization so that they get credit, because oftentimes you're doing portfolio work, maybe they're paying for a functionality or they're paying to resolve a bug, and then you can credit them. And then during ongoing communications, you can report back to them and let them know the things that are happening and how they're getting attribution on Drupal.org. And then the big one, right, collaborating with them. And we'll talk a little bit more in the how-to section when we talk about how we can collaborate with our clients and stakeholders when making development decisions or roadmap or sprint planning decisions around what we'll do. And again, so this is really about the approach. So it takes those values and principles, and it takes our engagement with the community, and we bring back and we collaborate with our partners. And then here is where we adopt other aspects of this approach built on Agile approach, and through a discovery process using sprint tickets, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. And then when we're evaluating solutions, whether or not we're doing something, in the theming layer, or maybe it's a contrib module, maybe it's a module that gets us 80% of the way there, but then we can decide on adding functionality to an existing module to get the other feature requirements for that particular piece of the project. And then here's a tool that I've outlined called a decision matrix. Oftentimes you're presented with different solutions, and you need to decide which one is the best one. This is a tool that will help you and your partners decide. So talking about Agile a little bit, the Agile Manifesto has its own set of values and supporting principles, and I just wanted to go over them a little bit just to see the relationship between Agile, the Drupal community values and principles, and this approach. And I've got a few things bulleted here, but as you look at these, think about how they possibly relate to Drupal's community values and principles. And some things that have come to mind for me is that, in Agile, you're favoring individuals and interactions over process and tools. And for me, that relates to treating others with dignity and respect. The value is over, you're valuing people over other things. And so you're based on that. You're valuing collaboration, communication, all that thing stems from there. One other thing that comes out here on the third one, customer collaboration. Again, that goes right back to better together, right? The Drupal community value of doing things together. You prefer collaborative decision making versus making a decision on your own. And that, for me, happens all through the project lifecycle when maybe a developer has, and I'm not talking very granular decisions, but even when you decide what the solution will be, sometimes an individual will make that decision versus maybe just reporting back to the team and letting people weigh in on the right decision. And then the last one, responding to change, strive for excellence. Under the value of striving for excellence in the Drupal community is the principle that change is constant. You always need to adapt and learn and then improve. So we have the 12 supporting principles in Agile. It's a long laundry list, but I'll just call out a few, and I just bolded a few words here, again, relating that back to the community values and principles. And I challenge everyone to think not just about how they interact with the community, but again, how you're interacting with your partners and your clients and those stakeholders as well when you think about these principles and values. Another part of Agile is this discovery process. I know we'll all probably do that when we are maybe bidding on a project or not just bidding on a project, but then you've got the project and you have this feature request that comes up, and you'll need to discover how to solve for that feature request. In our practice, we leverage Jira as an issue, project management tool. Jira has issue types. There are other solutions out there, and one of those issue types is called a spike. And I would use that as often as possible, because what you want to use a spike for is to decrease uncertainty. We also, we don't always know the exact solution right off. We haven't done, if we know it all, it probably won't be as fun. So we take those challenges and we need to investigate. So use a spike ticket to give yourself enough time to evaluate solutions and gather those business requirements. Make sure you understand the whole picture and then write that into the future work. Another thing I called out here is user personas. Many times in an engagement, you're thinking about, right, we want the site to look like this. In order for the site to look like this, we need the content architecture to support that. And then the content architecture is how we're going to get that content in there. And one of those user personas that I think sometimes we forget about is the CMS users, the content administrators. So in your spike, in your investigation, and when you gather those business requirements, you can actually gather the user persona requirements for the CMS user. And I think a lot of times that gets overlooked, or perhaps another example that comes to mind is so in Drupal you have the quick edit feature, or you have contextual links, for example. I don't know if we're familiar with that, but those are when you do a standard in Drupal install profile, you'll get the little gear icon on the front of the site if you're logged in, and you can quickly edit the content. Or the quick edit feature allows you to quickly edit parts of that content right there on the front end. Those two features rely on specific Drupal attributes being rendered in the template. And in some engagements where you're doing a lot of work in the theming layer, or you have front-end engineers or developers who want to control the markup, those will get slashed, right? They'll get removed in favor of more semantic markup, less divs, whatever it is. But when you're creating your business requirements, you can write that into the business requirements so that your client and your stakeholders who like that feature have a seat at the table, that they want that feature, and you can include that in the requirements that's something we have to have, so that then that informs the development process, because you're considering that you want to maintain support of those core features. And as you move forward through your spike process and you're investigating, you're evaluating contributed solutions, you're planning, you can call out that this contrib solution gets 80% of the requirements, and we're going to need to do 10% contrib work in order to meet the other parts of the business requirements for that feature. So as you progress, you can use a methodology, the Moscow method, where you identifying the must-haves, and so you build from your spike ticket, then you declare kind of what are your must-haves. Maybe forward compatibility with Drupal is a must-have. It needs to be secure. So when you think about those features that I talked about before with quick links, or contextual links and quick edit, if you write that in, then you can account for anything that's forward compatible with Drupal that may inject something into the attributes for your render array, for example, or anything else like that. So then you kind of continue on with that process, and you then get an itemization of all the requirements for that particular feature. And you're doing that collaboratively with your stakeholders, and then prioritizing them. And part of that spike process is evaluating those solutions. This is on Drupal.org as well. We favor things like reusability. When you take contrib modules that have been through the security process, they've been reviewed, so maybe they're more secure. So we favor these certain aspects of taking in a module because it gets us 80% of the way there. Then there's other things that we can do to customize that. You can, do a lot of logic in the theming layer through preprocess, or you can look to contrib back, maybe open up a feature request. One thing that has happened over the several years when I've been engaged in projects is during the initial discovery process, and I see a solution that gets me 80% of the way there, I'll go ahead and open up a feature request in the issue queue of that module, and kind of outline the requirements. So I get it out there in the community right away, and then what I'll do is start planning the development work for that feature request, and I do it more transparently and openly and collaboratively with the community in the Drupal.org issue queue, because I want the maintainers of that module to have stake and input into that solution, because I know doing that is going to lead to a better solution and increases the chances that it's going to be merged and adopted into a future version of that module, which will then result in a better solution for the client, because then they don't have to worry about maintaining a custom solution. It gets adopted in, then we just remove the patch and update to the next version, and they've got all that functionality. Also, that practice of creating those feature requests, not only do you get a better solution, but sometimes, and this has happened a few times, where we provide an estimate to the client, and because they are managing many different stakeholders and many different priorities, they choose not to pursue that feature at that time. We give them the estimate. They say, well, I've only got so much money to spend. We're not going to do this. We're going to do this over here. And then in a long-term engagement, if you're using Drupal.org and you're monitoring that issue, you can even then share the issue updates. And what I've seen over some time is that other people have similar needs to that feature request. And some people actually contribute patches. And over time, you can report back to your clients and say, well, the effort has gotten less because there's substantial work here. Or how about we put a spike in the next sprint, and we can evaluate that solution. I can come back and tell you how much more or less effort is going to be needed to finish that out. So you're doing it collaboratively, and you're getting a better solution, and then you're engaging the community, and you get and people will get that work, and then they'll get a better solution because you'll add to that, and then they'll take that back to their projects. So this is a spectrum of sort of the work that you can follow, doing core, contrib, or custom, and it's in that order. Let's see here. So this is a decision matrix where, say you've gone out, used a spike ticket, you're like, okay, well, I got a contrib solution, it's going to get us 50% of the way there. The other 50% is going to be this much effort, or we can do it all in the presentation layer. We can use a pre-process. We can manipulate the stuff, but we're going to lose some functionality. But it maybe is a shorter road. Maybe it's a less effort to do option B or option A. So with a decision matrix, you outline the factors that you want to evaluate your solutions. And at the top here, I have some examples. Feature parity is like you're going to get 100% of the features you want. That's really important for this particular request. Or how long it's going to take. Is there a pressing deadline? Because that's always a consideration. Maybe the shorter version is because you can get it out in 4 weeks versus something that's going to take 2 months. Forward compatibility, maintainability, extensibility. So these are factors you can decide with your team, with your client, and their stakeholders. Security can be up here. Or maybe it's always up there, but it's just not as explicit. And then you go through and you weight them. You decide for this particular feature request, for this particular work, what's most important in this scenario. And then you assign weights to them. I just randomly did 1 through 5. They could be anything. And then you go through and you outline your solutions, A, B, is that right? Yeah. And then you score them. And then you total them over here. And so that can be informative in your decision making. You're doing that with the whole team, with the whole product team, the stakeholders, the client, the product owner, whoever it is involved in that effort. So then that helps in engagements where you don't want to be like selfishly advocating for a Contrib-First approach because it's more enjoyable. You really want to do what's best for this engagement, and you can make it helps inform and share that information in a clear way what a client is getting and what they're not getting, right? Oftentimes we prescribe a solution, and like in a scenario like I mentioned earlier, we remove, in the theming layer, we remove attributes, so then automatically we lose, we lose quick edit, and we lose contextual links, or even worse, we're not bubbling up cache tags, and we lose really intelligent cache invalidation. But if you're doing it in a more open and transparent way and collaboratively, you give that information to the stakeholder, the product owner, and then they make the decision, and everyone can, do it knowing what you're getting and what you're not getting, and it can be informative in that. And then also what you're not getting, you can say, well, we're not getting this today. Let's put it in the backlog, and we'll revisit it a few months down the road. And in the scenario that I described earlier, where you've created that feature request in the issue queue, you can come back and report on that, and it opens up possibilities for further development, improving features, and things like that. So we're going to transition now and talk about the benefits. We talked about, what this specific approach is kind of built upon, these values and principles, and then also kind of how we can do it in our portfolio work. And then the benefits sort of describe, who these benefits are for. They benefit everyone, and in a myriad of ways. And we'll talk about each sort of audience here in turn. So, consumers, yeah. So consumers, I meant to update this. These are clients. I've been debating on what term to use because they consume Drupal, but I think clients is a better term. So we'll move on to that. So for clients, there's really big benefits. Is you're increasing the value that you deliver to the clients. Through this process, you're giving them the decision-making capabilities, you're informing them, and they're ultimately getting, through that decision-making process, they're getting what they want for their money that they're paying, right? And by focusing on that iterative approach, that collaboration, you're going to end up with a better solution in the long term and in the short term. You're getting the right solution for this particular scenario on this timeline, but because you're aware of everything that's moving, you can come back and deliver iteratively and improve on those solutions. One of the other aspects here that help with increasing the value delivered is, let's jump over here to this. Yeah. So we got increasing impact. By adopting those principles and values, you're focusing on all the people in the equation, right? The CMS users, all the different user personas, so that you can build a solution that's going to empower everyone there to, maybe it's a content authoring solution because you're going to help them produce content much more quickly, right? And they'll be able to do their job better, and they'll probably be happier that they're not waiting on Drupal to load and things like that. Increasing quality. As you adopt this approach as a developer, you're getting more involved with the community. Your proficiency is going to increase because you're getting mentorship from the community because you're interacting with people in the issue queues, at events, and you're actually going to be developing better solutions because you're learning as you're going, right? You're striving for excellence. The other aspects that you're increasing the value for the ultimate solutions is they're more secure. When you participate with the community and you're sharing your code, you're getting more visibility on that code and those solutions, and you're getting feedback and you're making changes. A recent example was, earlier this year we had a string of Drupal core security updates. And I think that was a result of higher visibility on a particular module, JSON API. As that was getting adopted into Drupal core, there was an opportunity for the community to take advantage, I think, it was a bug bounty program in Europe. And I think because of that JSON API was being adopted into core, it was a contrib module, it just started getting a lot more visibility and collaborating with other people in the community through this bug bounty program. And so all those Drupal core security updates were sort of related to this effort, and ultimately there's a more secure solution. So by participating with the community, contributing, and then you'll just end up with, the client will end up with better security on their solution. Forward compatibility, that's another thing that I keep bringing up. Like when you're doing this approach, you're becoming, your quality is improving, you're becoming much more familiar with the platform. You know that if you do not render the render array in your templates, the cache tags may not bubble up, and so you're breaking a core functionality of cache invalidation. Or you're dropping support for quick edit or contextual links or anything else that could be coming out in Drupal's future that leverages what Drupal expects to be there. If you're not participating and you're not becoming more proficient and more aware of what's going on with Drupal core, then you'll probably not enjoy, or your clients won't enjoy, those future benefits of maintaining a solution that's more aligned with Drupal core. And then extensibility. So when we work with the template layer, for example, and we're doing a lot of pre-processing, that's at the very last part of Drupal's rendering pipeline. If you work in that layer, the things you're doing there aren't as extensible as if you're doing it in a module. So as you become more familiar with working with Drupal and you start moving into module development, you'll learn that you can avoid using pre-processing so that your solutions that you're making can become more extensible, meaning you can do some other hooks or event subscription or things like that, as opposed to waiting to the template layer and pre-processing and things like that. So it's all coming together because overall you're building a better solution that's going to have more value and be more robust later on. One other key aspect to the benefits for the clients is lowering the cost of ownership. I was recently in an engagement where I thought a large organization, when they decide to re-platform on Drupal, that they're making an initial investment and they're going to depreciate that investment over X number of years. That they're thinking like, this is an investment, it's quite a large investment, I plan on using this platform for 5, 10 years, whatever that is. And they're already planning to re-platform later on down the road. When I asked the product owner this question about, what's their anticipated lifetime for this solution, it was indefinite, right? They did not have a timeline. They want to use this platform until it no longer works for them. And if you adopt this approach and you're developing better solutions that are extensible, forward compatible, they can do that. And then they can enjoy the benefits that the community does by adopting more things than Drupal core. When they update Drupal core versions, they just get all those new features right out of the gate. So then if we make things more maintainable and extensible, when business requirements change, you can more quickly adapt. You don't have to redo things because you've already built things in a way that's extensible, and so you can adapt more quickly. And so when you're lowering the cost of ownership and you're choosing Contrib or you're choosing a Drupal core solution rather than doing something custom, you're already, you're lowering the cost for that particular engagement, but maybe you're not lowering the total investment, but in the long term, they're going to get more value and lower costs in supporting a custom solution in the long term. And then one of the things I talked about being extensible is that you're getting compatibility the first time. So as you adopt this approach and you become more proficient, you're building solutions that are more extensible, more compatible with Drupal core, that you don't have to go in and fix things that you broke. Perhaps like in the template layer, you're not rendering those cache tags. And then you got to chase these bugs because things aren't invalidating, the cache isn't invalidating like you would expect, right? They make a change on this content item, but their anonymous users aren't seeing that change. And then you have to spend resources, time, money to figure out what those bugs are. And it turns out being a bug that you may have caused in the beginning. Learning, what is it, the expression, you learn from your mistakes, and boy, I've learned a lot. These are things that, I've learned over the years as well. Let's see here, yeah. So some of the other topics, reusability, reduced overhead. Talked about reusability, but put that in a different context so that you're working with an organization that they have one web property, but they have partners, right? They have subsidiaries, or they have other business ventures that need similar functionality. If you are working in a Contrib-First approach, and of course during discovery you're itemizing those business requirements, and you can include this. Like if you are working with your partners and you say, do you want to be able to reuse this somewhere else? Do you see value in taking this solution that we're building today and possibly using it on your other web properties? If they can answer yes to that, then you can advocate for a more robust solution. And so you can then reduce the overhead and the cost of building the same solution twice. We've probably been on other multiple engagements where you find yourself repeating the same sort of thing, and that's the time when you want to contribute something. And if you can advocate for that with a client and the stakeholders, that they will get the value and lowering the cost for other engagements that they may have down the road. So for individuals, for us, for the individual developer, decision maker, leader, project lead, what does it mean for us? For me personally, I find this is the part I'm doing, like I mentioned, 5 hours of development a week. I'm doing project leadership, a lot of Jira ticket estimates and things like that. And for me, this is really where I find purpose and sort of stewarding this approach internally at Nerdery and then advocating for it externally as well in the community. And then for when I was doing a lot of development, I just found that much more rewarding to be able to contribute in this way, and knowing that the work, I'm prioritizing impact, knowing that the work I do can be used again and again and again. That many more people are going to find value from the work that I do in this approach. So a few headings here. The purpose, that's the big one, I think, that really drives this. And then these other ones here are additional learning opportunities. When you engage with the community, you come to camp, you're learning all the time. And then when you're working in the issue queues, when you share the solution that you're proposing and you share code, you're going to get feedback, and your code and your development practice, your personal practice, is just going to get better through those learning opportunities. Which ties into the increased technical proficiency, and then the refined soft skills is where, a large part of this approach is the collaboration, being, learning to communicate the options, the values, the pros and cons, and going through this process and just being a team member with your development team, the project leadership, other people in your company, but then also the client and client stakeholders. And I think through all of that comes the professional growth. And then here's for providers. So if you are, you're an agency, you're managing or you're running a business, the benefits for advocating for this internally for a particular business is that essentially what benefits others benefits you, right? Your team members are perhaps, they're happier, they're enjoying their work more, and they're developing better solutions for your clients. The clients are going to be happier with the work, and they're going to be happy with your business. And when all that is happening, your business is probably doing well. Same sort of format, just a few headings here, just to highlight a few things. As an agency, if you're engaged with the community, you're building a brand awareness and equity. It's possible lead generation opportunities. I know that when I worked for MediaCurrent for almost 4 years, and in that time I started maintaining a series of marketing automation modules. And I think just being there and having your name associated with functionality is lead gen, right? People go there, they're evaluating Drupal, they use Marketo or Pardot. They're like, is there a solution? Oh, yeah, there is a solution. Oh, it's this company. Let me go talk to them. So all that sort of accumulates on it. Being engaged and building that awareness will lead to possible opportunities. As for the individual, you're having that mentorship opportunity with people in the community. That's great for a company because you're getting those additional training opportunities that you're not. If you're providing time for your team members to do this, that you're not paying directly for training. They get that through their engagement. And then these other sort of marginally, probably non-quantifiable things like increased retention and recruitment. But those are all part of it for an agency to consider. So just once more time with the definition here, sort of a working definition. It's being updated, as we start working with it directly at Nerdery. But just adopting those values and principles, collaborating, engaging. But I think the key part is they're members and not yet members, like directly engaging with our clients and our client stakeholders. Anyone have any questions?
Is that approach sort of embedded across Nerdery? Is this sort of you still advocating for it?
So at Nerdery, we work with many different technologies, and we work directly with companies on product development, and a lot of the times those things are confidential. We do have, the way we're organized, we have sort of an open source domain. And when I joined and I saw this, I wanted to do this, I was advocating for it, and they're like, well, let's do it with Drupal right now. We've tried some of the things in the past, but let's focus on the area I can influence with Drupal to see how it works, and then we'll learn from there and maybe apply it into other disciplines, particularly in open source. We do a lot of .NET development, and so there's things that don't necessarily meet sort of the criteria of where it would be applicable. All right. Thanks, everyone. If you have any other questions, let me know.